Welcome everybody to 999 question about contemporary living. We are in a Microfactory, a project of and Open Dot. And tonight we will speak about innovation in food. Food is one of the 4 areas we are working on and that we believe it could have a huge impact on our lives in the futures. The other areas are, of course, health, kids, and future in living. Tonight, our host is Lee Kadensky, co-founder of One Hope Kitchen and food scientist. Thanks very much for being with us tonight.
No, glad to be here. Just sorry that I can't be there in person. I bet it's nicer in Milan.
There's going to be other opportunities, I'm sure about that. So, do you mind to introduce us a bit what you're doing, what you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run actually 2 companies, One Hop Kitchen and an ingredient company we call Seafood Foods. And I look specifically at developing processing technologies for edible insects to turn them into value-added food ingredients, specifically designed for protein powders and also for meat replacement. With One Hop Kitchen, we manufacture and sell a line of pasta sauces that are made like a classic Bolognese, like a typical meat sauce, but instead of using beef or pork, they use restructured cricket or mealworm protein. This is our cricket arrabbiata. It's our brand new SKU that we've been working on. And I think you have our cricket and our mealworm Bolognese as well with you. We look at all kinds of ways that we can restructure insects into high-quality products that we can get people to adopt them and to use them in their diet.
So, why did you decide to start to work on insects?
So the real true story is that I wanted to win a trip to Portugal. I was a grad student back in 2015, 2014, and there was a competition for innovations in food security. And a lot of people were talking about edible insects. The conversation has always popped up about edible insects as a really great alternative to meat, dairy, and eggs and conventional animal products, and a great way to produce high-quality protein with very low-quality inputs and a small amount of them. The challenge I saw when I looked at the products that were out there was that there weren't any real products that replaced meat. And while we were talking about edible insects as a valuable opportunity to replace beef, the products that were out there were still snacks and energy bars. You know, they didn't have a functionality that allowed you to cook with them the way you would cook with meat. So I wanted to see if I could apply the kind of things I was learning about in my master's degree. I was studying cheese, but there's some odd similarities. And spent some evenings and weekends in a little lab and came up with a way to turn bugs into something like tofu that we now use as a dairy and egg replacement as well as a ground beef replacement.
Wow. So why do you decided to use this as an alternative to traditional meat? What's the problem with the traditional meat?
So traditional meats, I mean, the biggest concern is we consume a lot of them, and it takes a lot of resources to manufacture them. Farming varies a lot depending where you go in the world and how you choose to farm, but in the sort of worst case examples, if we're talking about beef cattle, I mean, it could be as much as 22,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of beef in edible meat. That's a huge amount of water, and right now, you know, everybody's talking about 2050 in the food world. By then, we're expecting population to reach about 10 to 11 billion. And we're expecting demand for food and meat to roughly double. So right now, we use a land mass roughly equivalent to about 8 Brazils just to raise our cattle. We don't have 16. So there's a strong imperative to find alternatives to conventional meat and that don't compromise on the things that we like in meat. I eat meat. I enjoy meat. I think meat is great. But I think the more opportunities we have to explore new foods, to eat new foods and to do that with a sustainable impact, the better off we're going to be and the richer our lives will be for the opportunities of the things that we get to take.
So there are a lot of cultures that actually use insects in different ways. So what's wrong with their way of using insects? If you say that insects could be a good alternative to beef or chicken.
I mean, if we're asking sort of what's wrong with their approach, I mean, what's wrong with it is that it hasn't proliferated. It hasn't been adopted by cultures around the world. There are many communities around the world that have used insects in food, including there's the famous Italian cheese that's from Sardinia, which is made with these mites. Insects have been in food for thousands of years and have been food for thousands of years. But we still haven't seen a massive adoption in the way that we've seen, say, chicken around the world, that has just grown and grown and grown. Our perspective, or my perspective when we look at other cultures, is that the thing that our company is looking to develop with edible insects is really something totally new. It's a new invention within food that doesn't have a cultural association. So with that, we need to create a whole new culture around it, and that's a very, very big task. We can look to other cultures and to how other people have prepared some of these foods, but we also have to look to the future boldly, and be prepared to create new things and experiment with new things that have never existed before.
That's why we are talking about this in our innovation talks. So you were saying that other products were available when you start to work on this idea, but something was missing. What was that exactly?
So the biggest thing for us, and what I think was missing, is ingredients. Right now, there's generally one ingredient on the market if you want to make a food product with insects, and that's something we call cricket flour. Which is basically, you take a cricket, you can do it with any insect, you dehydrate it, and you grind it up into a powder. And you can use that powder in other foods, but you can't really use that powder to make food directly. And there's a lot of challenges in the way that powder functions, how it doesn't really dissolve in water. It would be hard to make a dough out of it, that make it unsuitable for use in a wider variety of foods. So what I felt was missing were really a wider ingredient landscape, and ingredients that could start to replace the function that meat offers. When you cook a piece of meat, or you have an egg, or a glass of milk, you can turn that into a lot of different things by modifying it in certain ways. You can cook a piece of meat, you can pickle an egg, and you can turn a glass of milk into cheese. You can't do any of that with cricket flour right now because the ingredients don't work that way. What we set out to do was create the ingredients that could work the way meat, dairy, and eggs do.
Okay, so you were talking about another company, and I checked what you're doing, and one of the products, the thing that catch my attention is called TIP.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain me what's that, and mainly how you make that?
Yeah, so that's this right here. This is a frozen block of it. Textured insect protein, or TIP, is a method that I developed to effectively turn bugs into something like tofu. It's a totally natural process. It's kind of like making cheese. We grind the insects up in a liquid that contains water, some other salts, and a few ingredients. And then we adjust that a little bit depending on the final product parameters that we want. We may add flavorings, we may add other ingredients, we may change the pH, and then we cook it to coagulate the proteins and get them to essentially gel out of the liquid. Sort of like if you've ever made cheese, you start with a glass of milk, you can add acid to it, and you can separate that milk into a solid fraction, which is the cheese, which is the curd, and a liquid fraction, which is the whey. We've developed a way to do that with insects. And what's really neat is that we can take that process and use it on any insect species to make a different kind of product. So we've worked with 8 species right now. They all look, taste, and feel different. And we can also change how we make the product in the process to create different variants of it. So it gives us enormous flexibility. And as we start to explore the edible insect species that are available to us, the scope just widens and widens. We worked with 8 species out of maybe 2,500 that are documented as edible, and the real number of edible insects could be in the millions. So it's a really exciting landscape to explore.
Yeah, it's impressive when you think about it. I don't think that we use as many ingredients as insects that we could actually involve in the process. So the first product that you developed, or at least the one that you gave us, you gave me in Rome when we met, is Bolognese sauce. So what's in Italian we call Ragù. Why did you decide to start from there?
So we decided to start from there, really on a technical decision. If you walk down a grocery store aisle and you look for meat on the shelf in a glass jar, there's only really two products you're going to find. You can get pickled sausages, or you can get bolognese. And that's because bolognese is a very special kind of food. It's one of the few acidified meat products that are on the market and commonly available. We had this product, this textured insect protein. We loved it. We wanted to get it out to everybody in the world, but it had to stay cold. And that made shipping it very expensive and very challenging. So we were looking for a way that we could get our product out there and showcase a real meat replacing product made with insects that looked and felt just like a conventional meat product. But we needed a way for it to sit on the shelf for months if it needed to, and to be able to send it through the mail. So originally we wanted to make chili, we wanted to make all kinds of canned foods, but some of those foods require more sophisticated equipment to actually manufacture. And it would have taken too long for us to get started. So we looked at what other products we could make, and bolognese jumped right out. I have an Italian grandmother, so my nonna approved, even though she doesn't really like tomatoes or bugs. And we went from there.
I see. So I didn't know about your Italian heritage, and it's even more surprising that your grandma approved it.
Yeah.
No, but
still makes fun of us, but it's okay.
No, we have it here. It looks great. We are waiting until the end of the exhibition to try it out. But we will let you know what can we make out of it. I noticed that on the website you have different recipes. That includes pizza, stuffed veggies. So you're really planning on.
The easiest one is just pasta and sauce. Goes really well.
Yeah, undoubtedly. So we already saw the sauces and what you can do with that. Do you have anything else in mind? What's gonna be the next?
Yeah, I'll show you what we're working on next. These have been a recent one, and they've been really exciting. So we've been working on burgers. These are cricket hamburgers. They give us a really great way to make a wide variety of... Don't worry about that, just a bottle. They give us a really great way to make a wide variety of different meat products out of insects. So we're really excited about them. They're a really flexible product formulation. And so they give us a way also to control cost, control the nutritional properties, and then also make them into any form and structure we want. So we can make these burgers into burgers, we can make them into hot dogs, we can make them into sausages, we can make them into chicken nuggets, anything you like. It's just a matter of changing the flavor, tweaking the texture, and then shaping it however we want it to shape.
You were saying changing the flavor because you can change the flavor of the same insects, or use different insects to get different flavors?
Either one. So different insects have different flavors. They're like anything else. Some are good and some aren't. I've had bugs that taste like scrambled eggs, and I've had bugs that taste like paint. It's like any other food in the world. The raw materials are the most important thing. So if you have good quality raw materials, you can make great quality products. But like any other food, you can also add flavoring. You can also tweak what's there. And just like, if I gave you a chicken, you'd probably want to put a little salt on it, a little seasoning, this and that. Bugs go well with some flavoring too.
Okay. So, did you get any feedback from, chef or companies? Any interest, reaction?
Yeah, so we've been at this for about 3 years. One Hop Kitchen has been in stores in the U.S. and Canada for about 2 years and selling very well. Um, our main growth though is really as an ingredient company. So we do most of our business wholesale, selling to other companies, and selling them ingredients, including our tip, including cricket flour, and really anything you can imagine about bugs. We've just seen it grow in the past 3 years, and we've seen a huge shift in consumer education and consumer response to these products. So we're very optimistic for where the market's going and for what's happening with these. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to sample any products in Italy. Italy has some laws that prohibit the sale of edible insect products right now, but these are changing in the EU and in Italy. But I got some really interesting responses from participants at the Maker Faire when I was there in Rome in December. And a lot of very confused looks from Italians, who saw these products and maybe made a face, this or that. But I've also served this, to probably about 30,000 people now, and everyone's liked it. It's a great product. We wouldn't serve it if it didn't taste good, and we wouldn't make it if it didn't taste good.
Yeah, I understand both sides. Like every change, it requires a bit of time to get processed. But are you in contact with some professional chef? How they want to use it? I mean, are they hiding the fact that is made out of insects, or they actually embrace the change and use it as a marketing leverage?
So everyone I know uses it as a marketing lever. The reality of edible insects is it's a very new industry. If you compare the insect farming industry to the cattle farming industry, insect farming is maybe 100, maybe 200 years old, and cattle farming is at least 5,000. So we've got to play a lot of catch up. And that impacts us a lot on cost. So edible insect products can be very expensive right now, particularly because insects are quite expensive when you buy them from farms. We're seeing that cost go down, and at the same time, we're seeing the cost of conventional meat, dairy, seafood, and eggs go up. So we're very optimistic on the long-term trend for edible insects. But considering how much they cost to put in a product, it would be silly not to advertise that as a feature of the product. So all of our products, we say right there on the label, it's cricket. We're loud and proud about our bugs, and most of the people we know who make products with edible insects are shouting it loudly too. And the consumers that we're after, the customers that we're looking for, they are looking for edible insect products. They don't want a product that hides it. They want to know what they're eating. They're excited about it, and they want to try something new.
So that's a good start. Usually, everything starts from a change in the mindset of people, and it seems we are looking at one at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been very much a groundswell revolution. It still has a long way to go. So I mean, insects are still a very small percentage of the global food we eat. There's still, I keep saying there's 100 years of research ahead of us. There's probably 10,000. If we're being honest.
I see, a long run. But I'm curious now to hear to some criticism. So I guess you will get some kind of negative reaction. What are the people concerned about?
I mean, we've heard it all, and there are valid concerns, and there are ones that I think are maybe less valid. We've had very passionate vegans come to us and say nasty things about the work we do and what they think of it, who don't necessarily support the consumption of insects on ethical reasons or because they feel efforts would be better spent promoting plant-based alternatives. We've seen criticisms to insect farming on the basis that there just won't be market adoption, that too many people are put off by the idea. there's been challenges to insect farming as to whether or not it is as sustainable as it claims to be. From everything I've read and everything I've seen in this industry, I really do believe in edible insects as a great alternative to conventional products. I think they can achieve what they set out to achieve. And I think, as many naysayers as they are who don't believe this industry will grow, who don't believe consumers will accept these products, I mean, history is just littered with, strange foods that were never eaten and all of a sudden are everywhere. I mean, tofu was not a thing here 30 years ago. Now you can find it in every grocery store in Canada and probably in the States, and I'd wager in Italy too. Lots and lots of foods get invented and take a long time to be adopted. But it doesn't mean they don't become adopted.
Well, if this can, cheer you up somehow, I'm a vegetarian and I support your project.
Much obliged. We found a lot of vegetarians have been very enthusiastic about these products. We find, in particular for vegetarians, the nutritional aspects and the nutritional benefits of edible insects can be a big sell for them. And so we were surprised early on with how many vegetarians would come up to us when we do farmers markets, trade shows, events, and they'd say they were really excited about this because it had a lot of protein, or it had a lot of vitamin B12, or it was just a way to eat something new, and they were sort of tired of gluten and soy and gluten and soy.
Yeah, I also think that there is a huge problem in the cruelty that involves, the meat market in general. I don't know the details, but I guess it's less complex to process insects than cow, I would say.
So in general, there's some pretty big benefits from a humanitarian perspective raising insects compared to cattle. In particular, I mean, if you compare a cow and a cricket, cows don't really like to be close together and in small spaces, whereas insects do. They are designed by evolution to take a small amount of space and explode in population. And they apply that evolutionary strategy in how they procreate and how they reproduce and how they convert feed. Cattle and other kinds of animals don't necessarily work the same way. And our farming systems that exist today, and there's lots of different ways to farm, and the questions of animal welfare are difficult ones. There are good and bad farms out there from how they treat their animals, and there are different standards around the world, as to what the best way to do it is, and what the best compromise is between, the cost of your product and the accommodation that you're able to give the animal that is your product. Insects, by contrast, on the far end, there are entomologists that do believe that insects don't feel pain. They have a different nervous system than we do. Personally, I don't think that's really a convincing argument either way for eating insects. We just don't know enough. But they can be raised on a very small amount of land. They don't require a lot of feed or water. They're not environmentally damaging. And from the insect's perspective, I mean, they're able to live what I think is a full and happy life. And generally killed in a very humane way. They're a freezer. And because they're cold-blooded, their metabolism will just slow as their body cools. They go to sleep and they don't wake up. So it's not quite as messy as slaughter.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just last question. I know you have to leave soon, so I don't want to keep you here for too long. Even thinking in perspective, so not right now, but in a while, there is a huge discussion about circular economy at the moment. People are moving in cities, and it's becoming a stronger and stronger process. So cities becomes crowded, and we have to figure out a way to support the population of the cities. So do you think that we will be able, also thanks to this, to grow the food we need within the same area where we will use it, so within the borderlines of the cities?
So I'll be honest. I'm very much a skeptic on urban farming. I think you could. I just don't think we're going to be able to do it at a reasonable cost. And from the urban farming systems I've seen, whether that's insects, insect production, livestock production, fish production, or crop production, I'm not yet convinced that the scale is there to really meet demand at the same price that you can get growing in the country. And I think the urban rural model for agriculture makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. I live in Toronto. Real estate here is crazy expensive. I can't imagine what it would cost to operate a farm of any size downtown in the city when that could be somebody's. I think with insects, it's a similar challenge too. And for the process, and for the production to be cost effective, it needs to be well scaled. There may be some new technologies, that change this, and automation and robotics and drones are very, very promising for what they could do. And those could be enormous game changers for agriculture around the world. But from what I've seen so far, I'm more of a conventionalist in that I think we're going to see most of our food production happen outside of cities. I think there are some promising opportunities for reintegrating waste and repurposing waste as input feeds for, say, insects that may become food for chickens to become meat, or as substrates for other bacteria that may be able to digest them and produce energy and fuel, that could also go back into our agricultural system to power lights that grow food again. But I think we're going to, if we're looking at the waste to food stream, I think there needs to be a step in between that takes that waste and turns it into an intermediate product before it's turned into a food product. Just because I think there's a lot of challenges in the standardization of waste that are really critical to using it as a valuable feed.
I understand your point. I still hope we will figure out a way, but I see what you mean.
I hope so too. I would be more than happy to be wrong.
Okay, thank you very much, Lee. It was a pleasure to chat with you here. I hope we will have another chance. So whenever you pass by Italy, let us know. You will be welcome with or without the home kitchen products.
Much obliged. Pleasure chatting with you as well.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye. Goodbye.